Halloween machine. It's the Halloween. The man was there. It's the Halloween. Dracula was there. It's the Halloween machine. RoboCop was there.
Let's talk.
Spencer and Zach Explore the Universe is brought to you by Maine Spirits. Learn more about the delicious spirits they bring into the great state of Maine and what you can make with them at mainspirits.com, on Instagram at Maine_spirits, or download their app for your smartphone. Stay tuned at the end of the show for Happy Hour.
Spencer and Zach Explore the Universe is also brought to you by Bull Moose, now open for safe distance shopping. Get all of your music, movies, gaming, books, and pop culture needs at Bull Moose, with dozens of locations peppered throughout Maine and New Hampshire, or shop from home at bullmoose.com.
Also by State Theater, Portland, Maine. Though State Theater is closed for concerts at present, they are still working to bring you the best music entertainment in the comfort and safety of your home. Visit statetheater.com for more information, show schedules, and merchandise.
And by the Maine Music Alliance, a Maine-based nonprofit dedicated to the preservation of Maine's independent music venues. Learn more and donate at mainmusicalliance.org.
And by Sun Tiki Studios, a top-notch rehearsal and performance space on Forest Avenue in Portland. Though closed for concerts for the time being, Sun Tiki Studios is open for safe distance rehearsals. Learn more and book time at suntikistudios.com.
Nice.
Emergency episode.
Red alert, raise shields. Emergency
shields.
episode.
That's right. We had finished an episode already for this week. And then it occurred to me, whatever, I don't know whose idea it was, but
The royal we.
That Tom Petty's Wildflowers was finally reissued on vinyl and in general. Mm-hmm. And yeah, whereas we did John Lennon last week, because we love John Lennon.
Turns out we also love Tom Petty.
I love Tom Petty. I miss that guy.
I miss that guy too.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've told you this already, but I was at his very last show that he ever played.
I was at his almost last show, but that is not the last show. That's quite a thing to say.
Yeah, I mean it's a bummer to say that, though. I mean I'm glad I got to see him one last time, but I didn't realize that one last time was going to be also the last time he ever graced the stage.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah,
I saw him on the Mojo tour, and I have to say that I was a little bit disappointed in the show because it had this big lull in the middle. For me, it was a lull because he just kind of delved into all new material and like, I don't know, like these kind of like Bo Diddley kind of jams, which seemed like forever. And it actually, the crowd was like on their feet for 45 minutes, and then they were on their butts for another 45, and then back up at the end. He brought it back at the end. You know, even though like I didn't have when it was good, it was good. But then, you know, like he did, instead of doing like a full version of Learning to Fly, did an acoustic version. Same with Walls. Mm-hmm. And then on the tour that you saw him on, which is also the tour I saw him on, it was the 40th anniversary.
Yeah.
You know, and man, we were on our way over, a carload of us. We went with Derek and Molly and my wife. That was for Zach, not for people listening necessarily, but for context sake. Some
everybody
friends.
who knows.
Yeah, friends, good friends. And we were actually, the Ghost of Paul Revere played that show with them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was wild. So good to see your friends and then Tom Petty on the same stage.
That's amazing. I had no idea they'd opened for Tom Petty.
Well, it was more of a festival style.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But still, you know.
Also familiar with those.
Yeah, still Tom Petty.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the way to the show, we were thinking, like, just naming our like dream list. Like, what do you want to play? And only out of all the songs that everyone mentioned, only one, which was House in the Woods off of this album. He played them all. And I even was like version specific. Like, I want Walls, circus version. I want,
Yeah.
And he came out, and I think he played like Free Fallin' like first. You know what I mean? And I remember looking at my wife being like, what's he going to close with? You know what I mean? And it's, one of his...
Yeah, what's this one-hit wonder going to pull out to close with?
Well, no, it's not like that, but like, I mean, you think of like epic Tom Petty songs, like the sing-along by the, everyone's like in it by the end. It's Free Fallin', right? I just thought that was a really bold move.
For sure.
And on that note, too, I would say that when I saw him and I was like disinterested in the middle bit, I knew I was happy because I knew that he didn't give a shit. Because it's what they wanted to do,
That's right. It's their show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him twice total, and both of them happened toward the end. I saw him at the Los Angeles Forum when he was on tour with Steve Winwood opening up, which was amazing. And that was on the Hypnotic Eye tour, which I also really liked that record. So, there's sometimes with like the artists that have been around forever, when they get to the new material, you're like, boring, bathroom break. But, with somebody like Tom Petty, it's like, yeah, I thought that was a great record, and I was just as happy to hear those songs as the older songs.
Yeah.
And then, of course, his final show that I went to was the 40th anniversary tour, which was just hits all night long.
All night long. It was unbelievable. And he had, they brought along those backing vocalists, too.
Yep.
And they really rounded it out, just to kind of bring back that higher range harmony, because they're in their 60s. It's all right. It sounded right, and that's all that mattered. And they played great, and they were very clearly having fun on stage. One of my favorite things about that show, which was, I don't know if I qualified my show as excellent. It was incredible, like nonstop. His banter was, to me, amazing, because he just, in between every song, or when he would address the crowd, he would say, "Thank you very much. You people are wonderful." It was so great. It's like, thanks, Tom Petty.
Thanks, Tom.
You're great too. Like, you're the best. Like, when I was a kid, hair metal hit, and I was like, nope. And I was like 7th grade, 6th, 7th grade, somewhere in there. And then George Harrison's Cloud 9 came out, and I was like, interesting, interested. Tell me more. And then Full Moon Fever came out. I was like, go on. Oh, no. The Wilburys came out next. And then Full Moon Fever, if I have my order right there. But it was just like a whole, like, I want to say like 4-year season of nonstop Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, George Harrisonisms. And it was so cool, too, because like he was like a hit on MTV. He wasn't just like, like grandpa rock. Like, he was super current, which is weird because like he dropped Full Moon Fever when he was like my age. So it's not exactly like spring chicken. And, and Tom Petty, you think about like MTV, it's like, Michael Jackson, Paula Abdul, Tom Petty. Thank you very much.
This weird looking Southern dude with the weird voice singing about very adult things.
And very normal things.
Yeah. But also like he made like very visually appealing videos, which I guess is, what you were supposed to do when you were fighting for time on MTV.
He made great videos.
I remember So I remember when Full Moon Fever came out, just because Free Fallin' was everywhere. I was in 4th grade that year. And I remember swinging like on the swing set on the playground and, jumping off the swings and yelling, "I'm free falling." But then, that whole, like, I don't know, when you're that age, just everything kind of jumbles together. Like, I went from one year singing Free Fallin' to the next year, it was all about Boys to Men and whatnot. So there wasn't like a lot of musical focus for me until my next like clear memory of Tom Petty was, I think, in '93 when the Greatest Hits album came out, and Last Dance with Mary Jane was on that. And that video was excellent and was on MTV at all times. And it was like, Yeah, it was right when we had started like learning about DARE, like DARE to keep a kid off drugs.
Oh, sure, yeah. The Nancy Reagan program.
Exactly. Drug awareness something education. I can't remember what the R stands for. But anyway, and so yeah, the fact that it was like such an obvious marijuana reference in that too, we were like, ooh, I get it. Yeah, and then almost exactly a year later is when Wildflowers came out, and You Don't Know How It Feels also had a marijuana reference in it.
Yeah.
And was everywhere. And yeah, it was just, a guy that had been around since the late 70s was like every kid in York Middle School knew at least those two songs, if nothing else. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was just incredibly relevant for a guy who'd been around a long time and was not your Paul Abdul or your
Fine Young Cannibals.
Yeah.
For his contemporaries at that time. Yeah, he just kind of transcended perceived relevance. He's just always equally irrelevant and relevant. And I would say relevant, but he's I say irrelevant because what he was doing it didn't really like. This wasn't him trying to keep up with the times, although he wasn't as afraid to explore like, cool technology, like on Don't Come Around Here No More. I think he had Dave Stewart program those drums, and yeah, he's one of a kind. And there are a lot of celebrities that I wouldn't want to meet, I just wouldn't want to like sully my enjoyment of their material by potentially being, like I met Rivers Cuomo, right? And he was like, I know I've mentioned this in the show before, but a lot of people mention like, oh, I met Huey Lewis, he's a dick, whatever, but like, how do you know he's a dick? Like maybe he's just having a bad day. You see him in an airport and he's just like, maybe he has diarrhea, doesn't have time to talk to you. You don't know he's a dick. But I was like actively like blown, like just Rivers Cuomo went out of his way to be like rude, in a very public place at a party. It's not like I like knocked, hello, Mr. Cuomo, wasn't that.
Yeah, get out of here, kid. You bothered me.
We're both standing at a cheese table and he was a jerk, and then like, I can't, that kind of is my carry away from that experience, unfortunately. I don't know, maybe Rivers Cuomo was like super nice, but he was definitely like super rude. I just feel like if Tom Petty was like rude, it would be because I was rude.
Well, I've never met Tom Petty, but I passed up a potential chance to maybe meet him, and
Why?
I witnessed him. Well, so at that Hollywood Bowl show, the final show, first of all, I lucked out even getting to that show. He played 3 nights in a row, and the Friday night I had been playing a gig with Elijah Ocean in Phoenix, so that was like, can't do it. And then I got back in town like late Saturday, and I was like, oh, I should try to get a ticket to that show, but I was so tired, and also just like, it's Saturday night, it's Tom Petty at the Hollywood Bowl. Like, if I get a ticket, it's going to cost me hundreds of dollars. And so I was like, all right, I got one more chance, like tomorrow. And a friend of mine was working there, and she, I didn't even reach out. I think I had maybe she just knew that I liked Tom Petty, but somehow she was just like, hey, I've got a ticket for you. And I was like, great. And so I was in like one of the box seats, like way down in the front. It's the best seat I've ever had at the Hollywood Bowl. And, but so before the show started though, I wanted to go get a beer, and like all the beer lines were super long, except for I'd seen the one like all the way around, like if you're facing the bowl, like down on the left-hand side of it. I was like, ooh, that looks like a good spot to go get in line. And then the door to backstage is like kind of like right to the right of like where I was standing in line, and I saw Tom Petty come out that back door, and like a handful of people like were talking to him. I don't know, like they were talking as if they knew each other. Like it seemed like maybe like maybe somebody on the guest list or something like that was like knocking on the door to say hi to him before the show or something. And a couple other people saw him and went over and started talking to him, and I was standing there in line like, I could go talk to Tom Petty right now, but he looks like he knows those people, and like he's getting ready to play a show, and I'll lose my spot in the beer line. I don't know. I was just like, all these things were going through my mind, and then all of a sudden he was back inside, and I was just like, I maybe just missed my chance to have broken from this line and gone and talked to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think about if you end up like in a conversation with somebody notable or that you admire, like that's great. Like, but those like fleeting moments, I mean, it's cool, but like also like I don't know, Like I met Gordon Lightfoot, for instance.
Yeah.
Like a backstage pass. Were you
Oh,
there?
yeah, I was with you.
Yeah, you were there. It was like, and it was cool. There's a picture of us with Gordon Lightfoot, but like,
Yeah. And that was an official meet and greet, though. He's like, he's mentally prepared to meet fans.
right.
Whereas like Tom Petty was like, would have been like, okay, nice to talk, but I got to go play a show.
Yeah, I have diarrhea. I have to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just seems like he'd be the coolest, and I base that on like every interview I've seen with him. He doesn't suffer fools gladly. Gary Shandling was like one of his best friends. Mm-hmm. He's cool enough that a Beatle, Bob Dylan, Roy Orbison, and the guy from ELO wanted to be in a band with him. And that's like, kind of how I found out about Tom Petty. Like, who's this young guy? Comparative to, Roy Orbison, who actually wasn't that much older than Tom Petty at the time. I found like Roy Orbison was only in his early 50s when he passed away. Did you know that?
Yeah, I'm always shocked when I read that.
Yeah.
I always assumed that he was like at least mid 60s at that point.
He looked 50 in 1950.
Yes, that's true.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that, Tom Petty has no bad records, not one bad one. Mm-hmm. But there are certainly high points in his career, and I bet you'll agree with me when I say that it's "Damn the Torpedoes," "Full Moon Fever," and I would even lump "Into the Great Wide Open" as like that to me is like Sgt. Pepper Magical Mystery Tour. It's like a continuation. It's like more greatness. Yeah, and then again with Wildflowers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, like that early era of the Heartbreakers, which I didn't even know existed. Like back when I was enjoying, Last Dance with Mary Jane and those songs. Like I had no idea that there was, these decades of material previous to that. But yeah, I mean, all of those early records, I think, after Damn the Torpedoes are like kind of like the same thing. Where I think like Hard Promises is again like the Magical Mystery Tour to Sgt. Pepper thing to me, to my ears anyway. And even Long After Dark slots right in there with me. Like it's just a great run of records all the way through. There's maybe a couple I'm less familiar with, but none of them are bad.
Yeah, the album the name is escaping me. The Jammin' Me is on. It turns out Jammin' Me was co-written with Bob Dylan.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and I always liked that tune. And yeah, there's so many eras of Tom Petty that are so good, and he just maintained relevance, and he just always kept it cool. And I mean, I Won't Back Down is a tremendous, like it's a triumphant song for all time.
Absolutely.
And by the way, I don't know if you can hear this, but my dogs are just running circles around the house.
I can't hear it.
Yeah.
One of the ones I was thinking of today that I'm less familiar with is Echoes.
Yes.
I mean, I've done some listens, but I haven't done the deep dive on it.
Yep.
But the reason I was reading something about Wildflowers today, actually, and I guess Echoes, a lot of people refer to as Tom Petty's divorce album. And at one point, apparently, he said, "Actually, Wildflowers is my divorce album. I just didn't know it when I was working on it."
Right. Right. And Echoes is Howie Epstein's last album. Highlight track off that album, "Swingin'." That song is unbelievable. One of the highlights off that album. But to speak to the matter at hand, I mean, this person, just by being slow and steady and being super cool and relevant the whole time, just because he's cool, like had access. There's a very kind of famous story, if you're a Tom Petty fan, wherein Stan Lynch, the original drummer for the Heartbreakers, like he did not like Full Moon Fever. He thought it was a shit album, which is hilarious to me. He didn't like working with Jeff Lynne, basically, because Jeff Lynne is very meticulous. He's more of a rock and roll basher. And, I think that like their relationship had like, it's in the documentary, but the Peter Bogdanovich documentary.
Running Down a Dream.
Yeah, that's right. And they're getting. It's a show. It's like a benefit show. They're playing at the Viper Room, this tiny little room where you and I have actually played, and tiny room, and it's like this like all-star benefit. I mean, it's whatever. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers are going to play at the Viper Room. That's the benefit of this,
Yeah.
And Stan Lynch is like, I don't want to do it. He just was like all set, just didn't want to deal. And Tom Petty said, "Fine, I'll call Ringo," which is hilarious to me. Like, fine, I'll just call one of the most famous drummers in the world from the Beatles. If you're not going to make the show. Like, that's who gets your seat. Like, make no bones about it. If you're going to be a dick, I'm going to call Ringo. Yeah. Not some hack.
I love Stan Lynch's drumming, and it's kind of unfortunate that those guys did not get along, but I guess they did plenty of great work together up to that point. But then I also have this dream about what would it have been like if Ringo joined the Heartbreakers. Mm-hmm. And he actually is on Wildflowers.
Which I learned today.
And now with this deluxe version, he's actually on 2 songs on Wildflowers.
If not, is it 2 or maybe even 3? But yeah. I and also Carl Wilson is on this album.
Yep. And actually so here's one thing. So I guess we haven't really discussed any of the details about this yet.
Yeah.
Wildflowers was released in 1994 with 15 tracks on it. Mm-hmm. It was originally supposed to be a 25-song album. Some suit was like, 25 songs, too much, cut it down. Mm-hmm. And apparently still they didn't think it was going to be commercially successful. Oops. Mm-hmm. But then looks like, I guess, 4 of the extra 10 songs were on the She's the One soundtrack. Mm-hmm. And so that song that Ringo is on from the extras, Hung Up and Overdue, which also has Carl Wilson singing backing vocals on it.
That's right.
That was on the She's the One soundtrack.
Right. A different version, but yes, same song.
Yeah. See, I couldn't tell. It sounds like just a different master of the same version, but I didn't listen. I didn't get a chance to A/B back and forth too closely.
According to the liner notes, and I'm not trying to be a ding dong here, but
well, if you've got the liner notes, you're not being a ding dong.
That's right. But it refers to that version as like a original version. So there might be. I mean, who knows? There might be like minor differences. Yeah, I did not realize that. I did know that Mike Campbell was all over the record. You can clearly hear that them on Tench is on the record. Mm-hmm. Because this is also that period where Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers became like Rick Rubin and Sound City's like house band for like the Johnny Cash records and all this stuff. A very productive period of time, but. At various points, even Stan Lynch is on this record, which I didn't realize.
Yeah. So I read a whole bunch of stuff today. I think it was on the Wikipedia page where they were commenting on why this is a Tom Petty solo record and not a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers record. Mm-hmm. And basically he and Rick Rubin were like, we don't want to be constrained by, having to have just, these extra 5 guys and that being the lineup at all. But then they ended up just using the Heartbreakers for pretty much everything, except for Stan Lynch, which, for the most part, you're right. He shows up at some point.
Well, I reckon he was probably there at the beginning, and then he was like, I'm not coming out to that benefit. He's like, fine, we'll get Ringo. And then they recorded with Ringo.
Yeah.
But then also with Steve Ferrone, who was in the Heartbreakers longer than Stan Lynch was.
Yeah.
At
this point now, right? That was the first time they had worked together on Wildflowers. Am I correct about that?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And Steve Ferrone is just an amazing drummer. Just
amazing
power, finesse, pocket. In the John Bonham School of Excellence, I would say. Simplicity, doesn't overplay when he doesn't need to. Like, you don't know how it feels. Just think about that tune.
Yeah, so good.
I don't even know if there's a drum fill in that song. He might just go poof, psh, psh, tss, poof, the whole time.
I don't know if there is. There's definitely a couple of cymbal crashes at the transitions, but I don't know if there's any. Like a drum fill's not poking into my head.
Yeah, or House in the Woods, which has a couple of like the tastiest drum fills like on record. Like
absolutely
anyone's record. I guess we didn't like really kind of like properly introduce like this record. Like when it came out, the first single was "You Don't Know How It Feels," which you mentioned earlier, and it did follow in the tracks of "Last Dance with Mary Jane," and it was just immediately like, "Yep." Like I can't believe the record label didn't think this was going to be a hit record.
Yeah.
You know.
Also, 1994 seems like the perfect time to put out a double record. Like CDs were already, having albums with playtimes that were over an hour long. Like, why not just give us 2 discs of Tom Petty in 1994?
It's just another...
No iPhones to distract us, no Facebook,
Yeah,
like just 2 discs of Tom Petty to listen to. Yes, please.
And in listening to this album today, and I guess, how about we do the show intro now? Brought to you by Bull Moose. So this is another example of an entire Bull Moose minute. I went over to Bull Moose this morning. I ordered my copy, and it arrived. And the version I'm working with here is the 3 record set, which is the packaging is immaculate. It's beautiful. He's always had great album design, but like this one is one of my favorites. Because it's simple, but then if you open it up, it's augmented. In the center of the 3-disc set is the photograph that Mark Seliger took of him for the Rolling Stone cover when this album came out. It's him at a diner, like with his kind of his custard telly with a little Wildflowers insignia on it. Great photograph. It was super nostalgic to see that, like, because I remember like getting that issue when it came out. And it was just, this album personally took me from high school into college, and I listened to it nonstop. And this is during a time where like I was in school for jazz, like, so I'm trying to like, I'm learning about like John Coltrane, really, and here's this album, which was like just as much of a mainstay as like Kind of Blue was a huge album for me that year as well. There's something about, I mean, don't get me wrong, Jeff Lynne plus Tom Petty equals great.
Yes, it does.
It's so good. But having him in with Rick Rubin in more of that kind of like stripped down kind of production style. Like I feel like Rick Rubin has like less things going on in bigger sounds. Maybe.
From what I understand about Rick Rubin's production is that he doesn't really know music the way that musicians do.
Okay.
It seems like he's just got an ear for like sounds and songs. Like, he's the guy that is not afraid to be like, that song sucks, go back to the drawing board, and then get like get just an honest representation of it. And it seems like everything that, at least in the outside of the hip hop world, everything I've heard him produce is a lot of times, Johnny Cash, Neil Diamond, Tom Petty, like older dudes. And he always does sort of the back to the basics record for those guys. It's never, never the let's double the drums and speed your voice and put a Leslie on the guitar kind of thing. It's just, honest representations of good songs.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that's kind of like widely known about Rick Rubin's production style is that he doesn't show up.
Yes. We actually should have had Paul Fig on this show to talk about that because he's worked with Rick Rubin a lot.
We absolutely should have had Paul on this show.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just for context, Zach and I have had some very Wildflowers adjacent experiences in our lives, together and separately. Separately, I worked with Jim Scott, who was the chief engineer on this record. On the Ghost Ball Revere record, he did some mixes there. You have a relationship with Dave Bianco, who was also an engineer on this record?
Yep. Dave Bianco unfortunately passed away a couple years ago of a stroke. But he has a studio in North Hollywood, which is actually currently co-owned and operated by Paul Fig. With another friend of mine, Dave Spring. Dave was both. It's funny, both Jim Scott and David Bianco on these credits I have in front of me are just credited as engineer. There's a couple other assistant engineers and assistant mixer and all that stuff. But yeah, Jim Scott and Dave Bianco are credited as engineer, and that record won the Grammy for Best Engineered Album the year that it came out. And so in Dave's studio, just in the lounge on the bookshelf, it was his Grammy for Wildflowers.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, wow.
It's like, this is cool.
But then we also together recorded at Sound City, where a lot of the principal tracking was done for this record and the Johnny Cash record. So many famous records were done there.
Sound City Studio, which they've also made a documentary about.
That's right.
If you want more information,
That's right. Our record was not one of those famous records that was recorded.
no, and
there.
we were not interviewed for the documentary.
We weren't. We were. I was waiting for the call.
As was I.
Yeah, they could have talked to us about like the Miss Pac-Man machine. You know, I thought. But to which point, like Andrew, our drummer in the band, as fast as we were in at the time, he had bought the Steve Ferroni signature Yamaha wooden hooped snare. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah.
And he set his drums up in that room, and he tuned his drums up. He just, took him like an hour or so to like really get everything in place. And he then just sat down at the drums and played the first fill from House in the Woods.
I remember this moment.
He just put his sticks down like together on the snare. He's like, we just like, yep. That's
it.
That's the drum in the room where that was recorded. It's that, what I found to be amazing in that moment, the reason it's not to name drop, but like the drum sounds on that record are so honest. Like that's when you listen to Wildflowers, like that's what the drums sound like in that room when you're standing in there.
That's actually, I mean, not to gripe about our product, but that's one of the things that bums me out about our record, actually, is that we set up the drums in that room. Andrew did that drum fill, and we were like, oh my God, there it is. There's the sound. And that sound is not present on our record at all because everything is so close mic'd, and that the essence of the room, I feel like, was lost on our record.
No disrespect to Matt Wallace and Mike Landault.
No, great dudes, great work. Yeah.
It didn't work on our record.
No,
they
were. Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. I'm gonna go probably down the same path you are about to go down.
Yeah, I was just gonna say they were making a record for 2004 or whatever year it was that we were doing that. They weren't making the 1994 guy who'd been around for decades and could get away with doing whatever he wanted to record. Yeah,
but like he wasn't. I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know him, but like I don't think he was making the record for 1994 either. He was just making the record he wanted to make.
Well, I mean, that's what I mean. Is he'd been around long enough to just not have to make a record for 94.
Gotcha.
Like,
yeah. So I kind of touched upon like Rick Rubin very famously would his productions are like a brand. So it's a Rick Rubin production, and kind of like an executive chef. He'd like walk in and be like, yes, that's how I like things, or no, less of that, more of this. This song is stupid, and then he'd peace out. And apparently, Tom Petty like engaged him and was like, you're gonna be here. Which I love about Tom Petty. I mean, he very famously like has taken on record labels, and he stands for what he stands for. But this album was like truly special, and you knew it when you look at the cover. Like even the artwork is special. The photographs are special. This package, by the way, to get back to that, it's beautiful. It is, reissues sometimes are just like whatever, But this is like actually better than the original. I have to say, and it includes the first two discs are, which is true of the first vinyl issue. Sides 1 through 4 are the original album, the original 15 songs that came out, and sides 5 and 6 are called All the Rest. And so basically, this is a reconstituted double album, I guess triple album if you really look at it in terms of vinyl. And my takeaway from listening today repeatedly is that, like record labels should shut the fuck up.
Yep.
When you've got Tom Petty in there with a double record, saying like, I want a double record, or I mean, I'd even go back to like Paul McCartney and Wings' Red Rose Speedway, which we've talked about on this show. And they just recently issued the original double album that Paul had submitted. And it's excellent. And I don't know, like maybe if you're a record label, you should be like, well, this guy that wrote Abbey Road, or partly wrote Abbey Road, maybe he knows what's up. Or this guy that wrote Damn the Torpedoes, Full Moon Fever, Into the Great Wide Open, was in the Traveling Wilburys, and is a top-selling artist and a 40-plus-year-old man who's dominating MTV. Maybe he knows what's up.
Yeah.
And I kind of like was ready for... I was very excited to hear all the rest. But I wanted to temper that because, like, you know, Wildflowers is like... I don't know. It's 5 stars, one of the best albums ever made. And you would think that, you know, the outtakes would be amazing. But maybe they aren't. Maybe they were taken off for a reason, you know?
Yeah. Because there are some long records where you're like, man, that would have made a great shorter record if they just got rid of those tracks.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. But this one's great. Like Somewhere Under Heaven, Something Could Happen, Leave Virginia Alone, are all California is great, where he sings literally about like California's been good to me. I hope it doesn't fall into the ocean. Yeah, into the sea, right? Yeah. You know.
And that actually is one of the ones that. If anybody's familiar with the She's the One soundtrack, would recognize it from that.
And I'm not that familiar with that, to be honest with you. I didn't pay attention to that for some dumb reason.
Also, I guess like I think 2015, they remastered his whole catalog and did like a box set or something like that. And the She's the One soundtrack is the only thing they did not remaster and include in that box set.
Oh, probably.
I'm curious if it's because they wanted to save these tracks for this release.
I mean, that stands to reason, right?
Because it was Climb That Hill, which is represented in 2 versions. Here we get a blues version of it, and then a rock version of it that's similar to the She's the One. And then California, and Hope You Never, and Hung Up and Overdue was the other one. So, so that accounts for 5 of the songs that are on the All the Rest portion. But
yep, Hung Up and Overdue, Somewhere Under Heaven, and Something Could Happen are the 3 that, from a production standpoint, I'm just like, they're still dancing in my head. Like those are the ones that caught me first. But even on second listen, Harry Green is so beautiful, and it's like, I mean, I presume it's a true story about a childhood friend of his who.
I would imagine so. He stopped a redneck from kicking his ass.
That's right. Yeah. And it's just, but it's just like this. It sounds like a kind of an honest allegory of like his relationship with his childhood friend.
And if I recall, I only got a chance to listen to it all once, but I think that he dies at the end of that song.
He
right?
does.
Isn't it kind of like he's thinking back about how he affected his life, and now he's not here anymore.
That's right. Yep. And it's not trivialized. It doesn't seem pompous singing about it like, oh, I'm famous and this is like this yuck for my time. It's like, no, Harry Green was my friend. I think that he just says that directly, like he was a good friend of mine. Yeah.
So I have a couple thoughts and a couple of nerd facts for you.
Lay them on me, bud.
All right. Starting with the thoughts, this is just out of curiosity. I'm curious if he ever submitted the track list for what it would have been as a double record. And if so, why they chose not to represent it that way on this release, similar to, because you talked about Red Rose Speedway earlier, and that is resequenced to represent the way the album was originally submitted. This is just the 15 tracks as we know them, with 10 more tracks after that. And I can't imagine. I can't imagine when they were like, cut down this album. He was just like, okay, slice off the last 10 tracks. I'm sure they were more selective about it than that.
Of course, yeah.
So there probably was a different sequence at some point. But anyway, so that's just my thought. But just from an audio standpoint, when they were remastered in 2015, according to analogplanet.com, that was the first time that they had actually been mastered with analog. Apparently, the original 1994 2LP release of this was a straight transfer from the CD master. So it was just a 1630 CD master transferred to records. Like, this has actually been apparently, like, they have to do something with the individual tracks where they, like, you know, get them on tape, and then they get the sequencing and stuff, like in the space between the songs, like just like it was on the original representation, and then they do the master from that, and then that was the master that was transferred to this collection. So it's like I think the 2015 remasters. And then, although that didn't, this particular article that I was reading didn't get into, I mean, I imagine they use the same process for the new songs at this point to make sure it's cohesive. Because they did talk about the home demo recordings, which I think you said you hadn't listened to yet.
I have not. No, I spent more time. I hit Wildflowers, the OG program, all the way through, and then I listened to all the rest, and then I went back to the top of all the rest and did that a couple of times.
Yeah, so apparently the home demos were recorded at his home studio on ADAT, but those were then, I mean, this is super nerdy, we don't really need to get into it, but it was like, they were transferred from the DAT to Pro Tools, then to an analog board, and then back to digital, and those are also kind of cohesive with this. It's not like a shock when it goes from the end of the album to the home demos. And they're like, his representation of You Don't Know How It Feels is like almost exactly the same, minus there's no drums on it. But everything else, the guitar parts are there, the harmonica parts are there.
Yep.
Like, and his acoustic guitar sounds great, like, through this whole collection. You know, a lot of the songs are just vocal guitar, but like the guitar is doubled, panned left and right. His vocals doubled. I was looking for, like, or expecting more like work in progress kind of things when I got into the home recordings, and they were very polished, almost finished sounding songs. There was only a couple things that caught me by surprise, like a couple like different lyrics here and there. But the big one was, It's Hard to Find a Friend has always sounded like a sequel to Wildflowers to me. Like, it's very similar vibe and very... and it turns out on the home demo, the chorus, or what became the chorus of It's Hard to Find a Friend, was a bridge in the middle of Wildflowers on the home demo.
Bling, 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 bling.
Yeah. Da, 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 da. But he didn't have lyrics for it at that point. He's just, doing exactly what I just did through that section. It's like, oh, there it is. There's
And also, another fun fact is that the song Wildflowers, the title track, the first song on the album, was not a written song, really. Like, the version that we have on the record, so the one demo I have heard is that, because they released that first. And it's just him playing in his home studio. But apparently, like, the lyrics are effectively a stream of consciousness, which is, if you think about it, like, makes sense, because you belong among the wildflowers, you belong in a boat out at sea. Sail away, go find a lover. You belong somewhere you feel free. Like, what? But like, but so relatable though.
Yeah. Also, one of the things I was reading today, I didn't keep track of where this one came from, but apparently somewhere along the line, he told the story of having, he was about to go through a divorce at that point. And so he was talking to his therapist and talking about how that song was just stream of consciousness. And his therapist was just like, well, you're writing about yourself. You belong somewhere you feel free, like, you're just telling yourself it's time to get out of this relationship.
That was from his first wife, Betty, right?
I don't remember her name, but if you say so, yes.
I believe
yes, his first wife.
I believe it's Betty Petty.
Betty Petty. Gotcha. Yes, of course, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's even some songs on there like I can't remember the name of I Hope You Never, where he basically said, I hope you never fall in love with somebody like you. Ouch. Ouch.
They got married young. They got married when they were 17.
Oof.
So yeah, that must have been kind of a rough one
It's not even legal.
at the end there.
What is it? Well, he's from Florida. Never mind.
Yeah.
It's like the one state, like being from Maine, that you can just unequivocally make fun of. A lot of people are like, "Oh, Maine, like isn't that Canada?" Like, yeah, but Florida though, right? Am I right? Sorry if you're from Florida, and I don't mean sorry if we're insulting. I just mean I'm sorry if you're from Florida. Yeah, but this package is it's just so good. Like everything about it. There's like little candid photographs of everybody involved. They even have a picture of Michael Kamen.
Oh, right on.
Yep.
That actually was one of the things I was going to mention because
Yeah.
I was shocked. Like the song, it's been a while since I've sat and listened to this record, or like not listened to it in a moving van or something like that. And the songs that struck me today were not the usual ones that I think of when I think of this record.
Cool.
Like the first was "It's Good to Be King," which I know was released as a single back in the day. But obviously that never hit me as hard as a kid as "You Don't Know How It Feels" did.
Yeah.
But today that song came on. I was just like, this is like a Beatles worthy, like,
I
piece of
appreciate you
work.
bringing that up because if I can sidetrack you for 1 second,
I'll go for it.
which tune is it? It's there's a couple. It's towards the end. It occurred to me like how very Beatle-y this album is, like in not a derivative way, but just like like I've been informed by this.
Yeah.
Lots of chord structures, like chord voicings, right? Like lots of harmonic choices. It almost like at times it feels like Beatles for sale. But yeah, I'm sorry not to derail you.
Oh, it's
but
okay.
That was a takeaway for me as well.
Yeah, It's Good to Be King. Just it's got that huge Michael Kamen string arrangement.
Yes.
And those like cascading cellos in the chorus. I was just like, this is so awesome.
Yeah,
like,
actually,
why
yeah.
has it never hit me like this before?
I had been aware of those, but like in my brain, it was actually much more cascading than it actually is. In my brain, it was, but it's not. It's like, and then the band kind of takes care of the rest of it. And just evidence of a masterful arrangement.
Absolutely. And I bet if you take those strings out of that, like if you take the band away from the strings underneath it, it probably sounds like, a Lord of the Rings where the king,
Yes.
ba-da-da-da-da-da.
Well, I bet if you were to isolate the string tracks, the orchestration on that on that song. Sorry, do you remember when they remixed Abbey Road? They put out just the strings from something.
Oh yeah, yep.
And what was amazing about that is that you could listen to that and know exactly where you were in the song. Because it was so supportive of the whole song, the song as a whole. Like it wasn't just like I'm a string part and I'm going to do this. Like it I don't know. It's like almost like if you were to like bite down, like if you're getting an impression of your teeth and you bite down on and make an impression of your teeth, like that's how that string arrangement like fits the song in a way. It's just like it's supposed to go like shoop, and you don't even notice that it's there because it's like it's imbued in the tune. And I would say the same for "It's Good to Be King," like, including but
so
not
good.
limited to that little. They take the time for that little boom, doo, at the end. You know what I'm talking about? Just like they hold,
Oh, yeah.
they just hold space. Like it's almost like normally string arrangements on pop songs don't take up that much space, or just like say like we're gonna treat this like Schubert, and this is the end of the movement, and you're not gonna clap until the very end. And and I noticed on this master, like I listening today. Sorry, I just bearded my microphone. There are lots of things, and I've listened to this album countless hundreds of times, just so many times. I heard things today for the first time. Like, I don't know, just things were revealed in the remaster, the presentation. And I listened on 3 different environments. I listened on my studio speakers. I listened in my car because driving, listening, and on my my headphones where I do the lion's share of my recreational music listening. And I just kept like hearing little things that poked out. Actually, I have a Wildflowers story for you, which is good because we're doing a podcast about that very album.
It works out great.
So in working with Jim Scott, one of the engineers, which I believe I may have wrongfully said chief engineer, but yeah, one of the main engineers on the record, along with Dave Bianco. You know, I'm in this role. I'm producing. I'm coming to him as a producer with a record for a client. You know, and so I'm trying to like just like wear my producer pants and like kind of like meet him as an equal and answer his questions and make requests and all that kind of stuff. But at one point, I was like, "Do you have room for a nerd fan question?" He's like, "Yeah, go ahead, shoot." I was like, "Wildflowers, the song." I was listening the other day, and I heard like, is it a harpsichord? Did you guys have a harpsichord in the studio? And I explained to him like I had been there, like I played on I played on those instruments. You know what I mean? That's another thing too. That's kind of neat. That piano, that Hammond, you know. And he was like, "Oh, no, it was probably the U87. The microphone is a large microphone, heavy microphone. The U87 kept like slipping, and it would touch the piano strings." I was like, "Oh." He's like, because Ben Montench, the piano player for the Heartbreakers, would like, he wouldn't necessarily do the same thing every time. He'd kind of like gravitate, rotate between, the Hammond or piano or Wurlitzer or whatever he was feeling at that moment. So he had to have all those tracks live, and just, for the layperson, like, you would mic a piano with probably 2 mics, low and high, stereo. You'd mic a Hammond with maybe 3, possibly 4 mics on the Leslie speaker to capture the left and right high, the woofer low, and then maybe like back a bit to get some room sound on it. Wurlitzer would be like either direct or through probably an amp with a mic. So like that's not the inputs kind of like, stack up pretty quick. And this is like pre all the inputs you ever need. Pro Tools world. We're still working off. At that point, it was a 24-channel Neve, right, or 48 Neve.
I can't remember. I should know because it's like one of the most famous.
Yes, it's the one we recorded on. It has 48. I think it was 48.
Yeah,
but still, like
that makes sense.
Yeah, by the time you get kick, snare, hi hat, overhead, left, right, bass, DI. Guitar 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. But you get to the keyboards, like you probably don't have 8 inputs for it. So they had, regardless of how many channels are on the board, like they're probably dealing with 24 or 48 tracks of audio on the 2-track. The 2-inch 24-track reel-to-reels, which were synced. Using time codes, that took up 2 tracks. So really, on a 48 track, you're only dealing with 46 tracks because they have to leave those 2 tracks for the time code. Long story short, he had to bust everything down. So all Ben Montench's keyboard tracks were on 2 tracks. There it was. Like you couldn't mix it after the fact. It was what it was. And throughout the recording of that song Wildflowers, apparently the heavy microphone had just like crept down very slowly. and when he played piano, like it was actually like the screen, the metal screen of the microphone was actually touching the piano strings, causing a vibration that I perceived to be a harpsichord. So there you go. Happy accident.
I'm going to put headphones on and jump back into that song as soon as we're done here.
This reminds me of the time that I cued you to the 60 cycle hum at the top of Ram.
Too Many People.
Yeah, that's right. You can never unhear it now.
Nope. Well, until I lose that frequency in my hearing range.
Trust me, you can still hear it.
Speaking of piano, another song that jumped out at me was Wake Up Time, which is the closing track.
Yes.
And I feel like that's one that, I don't know, I feel like maybe I just didn't absorb that song as well previous to this listen, because it almost felt like a new song to me listening to it today. And it's another one with like beautiful string arrangement, but also like really interesting approach to the way he plays piano on that. And I assume that that's Tom Petty playing piano, because he does have a piano credit next to his name here. And the home demo of it is a little bit sloppier version of that same piano part. It's really interesting because he's like, playing full chords with his left hand, and then like doing pieces of chords with his right hand, but also keeping rhythm on a single note at a time on the right hand. Like it almost feels like the way somebody who plays acoustic guitar most of the time would approach playing piano.
Yeah, it is Tom Petty on piano on that song.
Okay, yeah, it's really unique and really cool, and like he puts little pieces of the melody in here and there, and and again the way the strings are on there, and also just I guess you talked about how his age when he was doing this record too is like pretty much closer to where we are now.
No, he was like older
that's why.
than we are. I mean, like I said, he was 40 and change. I think when Full Moon Fever came out.
That's true. I should have looked it up.
He's in his 50s probably. When this one hit, or late 40s anyway. But yeah, totally.
Well, he's singing about some adult stuff.
For sure.
And I don't mean like pornographic.
No,
I mean mature.
It's Tom Petty's Brown Chicken Brown Cow song. Yeah. Brown chicken brown cow. Oops, I keep bearding my microphone. Sorry about that. I found that song listening to it today, like just in the current, context of our lives right now. It felt super relevant. It's time to wake up. No, it's because it's wake up time. It's time to open your eyes and rise and shine. It's like, yeah, Tom Petty. It is time for that. Like, not only just like wake up, he could be so bitter about it and be like, it's time to like wake up and get your shit together. It's like, it's time to wake up, rise, and shine. Like, be a better version of yourself. God, I will tell you this. This morning, I was up very early and like went out to get some milk because we were out. And I hopped in the truck and I put on NPR, and it was just like, this is what NPR was like. Bad news. This bad news. In California, more bad news. Go over to Washington. What do you got over there? Bad news. I was just like, ugh. It wasn't that. It was actually Maine Calling. It was like this call-in show, and there was some ding-dong who's running for something talking about shit that I'm like, nope. Like, that's not, and it's just like that kind of shit. And I'm not somebody who's like, fuck the opposition. I'm not like that. I just
No, there's a couple. I almost feel like I know exactly who you're talking about, just because I've been watching local news, and every now and then they'll check in with the local guy running for the local office.
Yep.
And there are a couple dudes out there that ding dong is the nice way to describe
there are some ding dongs out there. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
It's not even like I disagree with your political policies. It's like, you're not a smart person.
Yeah, this is not good. You should be running for a thing.
Yeah, you should not be running for a thing.
You shouldn't even like manage a Sizzler, which is bankrupt, by the way. Yeah, sorry.
Did not know
sorry,
that.
I had to find out here.
I'll wait till we're done before I start crying.
Yeah. Well, speaking of crying, so I'm listening to this bad news. I'm just like, no, I don't. I was like, nope. And I just went over to Spotify. I was sitting at a stoplight, and I put on like Tom Petty, Wildflowers, play. And I was by myself in my car, and this is the noise I made. Like, by myself. By myself. Like, it was like, and I just had this moment of like, I don't want to sound like a huge hippie here, but like, the power of music to move you is a very, very special thing. And
that's why we do it.
It's why we do it. It's why I listen to it, I mean, would never assume that I've been able to move someone the way that I've been moved by Tom Petty and many other people. But that moment it felt, I don't know, it just felt like it was almost like it had a similar quality to like a hug from your mom when you feel like shit.
Yeah.
You know, and
I almost had the same feeling when I put it on today without even getting into the bad news first. And I think, you've spent so much time with this album over the years. It is very much like an old friend. But at the same time, it's got this fresh new presentation. And like, you've matured as a person and a musician over these amounts of years. So it's like, yeah, you put it on and you hear so much more in not just the music, but the lyrical content, and it's sounding better than it has before. Like, and there's a bunch of songs on it that you've never heard before as well. It's like,
like a bunch of songs that are like from the era. It's like, it reminds me of when I Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life, right? I've owned that on record. I actually have owned it on 8-track. I've owned it on cassette. I've owned it on CD. And for whatever reason, when it was originally issued, there's a song called All Day Sucka, which Stevie fans would know, but for some reason I did not. I had never heard it. It's just because it was originally issued as a 45 included in with a double record. They could toss it in the package.
And most of the time when you find used copies of that album, that 45 is missing.
Which is the case for me as well. Yeah. And this is before like vinyl reissues and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'd never heard that. I heard that song for the first time. I was like, what the fuck? It's like a brand new song from 1973 from like prime Stevie brand. Like it's like, and this is like, and I don't want to talk out of school here, but like this is like a second album of Wildflowers songs that are all great and super relevant and totally should have been included. It's like if someone was like, oh yeah, Abbey Road was actually supposed to be a double disc. Like what? Like
what?
Prime era Beatles, like. And this album is like really special. It's really emotionally touching. It's earnest. It sounds honest. The way it's recorded, the way it's presented, the way he sings, what he sings about, how he sings. And I'll tell you what, this was the record that I was having like a full on anxiety attack earlier today, and I put on this album and it was like, oh. It's better. It got better immediately, and I'm so thankful for Tom Petty and just all the amazingness that he was, and all the people who just showed up for work on this record and crushed it, including but not limited to the Heartbreakers, a Beatle, and a Beach Boy. Like
imagine being able to say that about your record too, like.
And like not in a name-droppy kind of way. Like, yeah, and like my buddy Carl came in and sang, he's got a beautiful voice. His voice is wonderful. Love Carl. But yeah, I mean, barring you having any other zingers and huge...
I've got one piece of nerd trivia for you.
I'll take it.
So Leave Virginia Alone, which
yes.
I think is one of the Leave Her Alone.
Leave her. Stop it. Get off the shed.
I think it was one of the.
It's not what that song's like.
No, it's not. I think it was one of the first. It was one of the first singles I heard. I don't know if it was the first released. I didn't look, but as far as like, we've got a new Tom Petty thing coming out. Check this out. But it turns out that song was released in 1995 as recorded by Rod Stewart.
Oh.
So there you go. And I actually checked it out today. And it's all right. It's not as good and honest sounding as Tom Petty as it sounds very 1995.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
But that does exist.
I don't have hatred for Rod Stewart, but I don't need to hear it. Like, I don't even want to go down this rabbit hole because we're talking about this beautiful album. But Rod,
sorry.
like,
I should have put this in earlier.
Yeah. I don't know if that was a strong sticking point. I don't even stuck the landing on this one, bud. Anybody else? Did Chumbawamba cover any of this Tom Petty song?
No, but Creed got in there and did a
Five Finger Death Punch. Actually, did a version of Wildflowers and a video where they portray people who wear masks as Nazis.
I don't know if you remember Skidmark, that goth rock punk band from 1996.
That's probably real. Ted Nugent did a compelling version of You Don't Know How It Feels. But when he said joint, he said Coke, 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 Coke.
He said it about 57 times.
If Mick Jagger said joint, my guy said Coke, Coke, Coke. Oh, God. Anyway.
Tom
Petty.
Wildflowers, good record.
Yeah.
Go to Bull Moose.
Totally go
Get
to
a
Bull
copy.
Moose and grab. There's the 3-disc set. Beautiful, totally worth it. And I mean this sincerely. Like, this is, you have records that you love to listen to, and then you have records that you love to listen to and look at. And this is now a proud addition to my my vinyl collection.
The listen and look shelf.
Yep. Like, I did a thing today, Zach, where I actually went and, you know that Red Rose Speedway that I got you?
Oh, yeah.
Reconstituted.
I know it very well now.
Right. So this exists only, the only place that this album, Red Rose Speedway Reconstituted, exists is on vinyl. And I have a copy that I love. I love it so much I bought it for you. And I've, and you're not the only person I bought it for. I just love it so much. I just feel like people should hear it. And it occurred to me, like, oh my God, like, what if I scratch it? So I actually went out and bought a safety copy today, which I also have a safety copy of Ram, the Ram reissue, because I just always need to have it. I just need to know that I always have a fresh copy, and I actually might go out and get a safety copy of this, because this is
Nice.
this is really special.
That's what my older brother used to do with his cassette tapes.
Yep.
He'd buy a tape and he'd make a copy of it, and then he'd put like the tape in the drawer, and then because he was just like, he got so tired of tape players eating his tapes.
Yep.
He was like,
Yep.
I'll keep a master copy and a dubbed copy.
Really smart.
Yeah.
Yep. So this is beautiful. I have not laid eyes on the 7-disc set, but
Apparently there's also a 9 one, and we're talking LPs here.
there's a 9 LP set.
Apparently.
Holy shit!
I don't even know what is on it. That might be the one with the live stuff too. I don't know.
Yeah.
The 7-disc I think has all the home demos and maybe some other alternate takes. I'm not sure, and I don't know. But apparently there's one that's even longer. So
That's a lot. It's a lot to take in.
sure is.
Yeah.
Gift that keeps on giving.
One of my favorite parts of this package is that on one of the sleeves, the inner sleeves, like you get the song information, lyrics, personnel on one side, and then the back there's art, and this is true for most of these. And on the back side of one of them there's a piece of art for each of the original 15 songs.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I bring this up because Wake Up Time, which you're just talking about, actually has a picture of a piano. It's a
Nice.
drawing of a piano. And they use the Beatles font. The Beatles font.
I've heard of them.
But you know which font I'm talking about. The
I do.
Quistra-
Ringo's kick drum.
Yeah, that
the
one.
Beatles
That
logo.
one. Yeah,
font.
the Beatles font. Anyway, beautiful package. Really, really well done. 5 stars. We'll be back.
Yeah, 5 stars. Holds up.
Holds up. We'll be back. The new version, double record, also 5 stars. They did not cut any shitty songs. They cut pure gold off this thing. So enjoy it, and check it out at Bull Moose. And that's about
This
it.
has been our show.
Yeah. And do you want to do any parting words to make up for the Rod Stewart story?
All I can think of is like Wesley Willis yelling out taglines when you say that. It's like, Polaroid, see what develops.
There you go. There you go. Is that it?
That's all I got. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it. All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye.
It's time for Happy Hour, presented by Maine Spirits. We've been making a lot of drinks with absinthe lately. I think of absinthe as quite seasonal. It feels like fall to me, have that anise flavor. I don't know what it is about it. But yeah, it feels appropriate to fall, which is when this is airing. So one thing that I do want to do with and for you is, if you've bought this bottle of absinthe already, let's use it more often so it doesn't become one of those bottles that just sits in the back of your liquor cabinet And in 2055, you look back and say, like, I remember when I bought that, and throw it away. That's not good. So we're going to make a Corpse Reviver number 2, a classic cocktail that as a bartender you have to know. Get our tools together. We're going to need a shaker, a strainer, a jigger, a paring knife, and a coupe glass. For ingredients, we're going to need gin, Cointreau, Cochi Americano, lemon juice, and absinthe, of course, our featured liquor. Let's build this thing. In a shaker full of ice, add the following: 1 ounce of gin, 1 ounce of Cointreau, 1 ounce of Cochi Americano, and 1 ounce of fresh lemon juice, and a dash of absinthe. What's a dash? How much is a dash? It's a dash. Figure it out. A dash. That much. Dash. Now, shake this until very, very cold, and then strain it into a coupe glass. And now take an orange and cut off a nice big swath of it, and then take that peel and express the oils onto the drink and under the rim the glass, and then drop it in, and let's take a sip. It is tart. It is strong. The absinthe gives it that, yes, the anise flavor, but there's a little something more to it. It's like kind of ethereal. I think it's like a kind of an aptly named drink, to be honest with you. It's supposed to be a morning drink, I think, for those who maybe have been hungover. Upper crust. These are like first world problems. You can learn more about this drink and other drinks at mainspirits.com. You can download their app for your smartphone or follow them on Instagram at main_spirits. And as always, we encourage you all to drink deliciously and responsibly. Spencer and Zach Explore the Universe is brought to you by Main Spirits, Bull Moose, State Theater Portland, Maine, Sun Tiki Studios, and the Maine Music Alliance. This show is a Mistakes Were Made production.